announcement there.
You're listening to Head South Radio with your host, Kat Meyer, a podcast dedicated to prioritizing pleasure and removing the stigma and shame around sex. We're here to be curious and have an open conversation about sexual health and relational wellness. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes. The information discussed is not a substitute for professional medical advice.
Okay, so to get started, just find yourself in your seat. So feel your sit bones grounding down into whatever support you find yourself on. Allow your eyes to close or just soften the gaze. Feeling your seat, and then from that rooted, grounded feeling, start to allow the crown of the head to lengthen up towards the ceiling. And just tune into your breath. Maybe take a moment to notice your thoughts, if there's anything coming through. And then before we get started, just setting an intention for yourself for this conversation. And then when you're ready, just start to blink your eyes open, taking in the light, taking in your space, and then taking in the screen. Hi, Lauren.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you for joining me on Head South Radio. We're going to get started with some icebreakers. So the first question is, what fictional world or place would you like to visit?
Oh, gosh. I don't know how I'm going to narrow it down to just one. I think right now I'm reading this series called The McMaster's Guide to Murdering Your Employer. And it's this fictional world where they teach folks how to be good deletionists of people who kind of deserve it. It's just like set in this post-World War II, and it's very like kind of kitschy and fun, but it definitely has that very like the bad guy being the good guy feel. So think like Dexter. But just like really fun wordplay. And this McMaster's campus sounds so beautiful and idyllic. And I love school. So I think I would probably like to go. I don't know that I want to become a deletionist. And I definitely don't want to delete my employer at all. But I think I would visit there.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I would either visit the world of Star Wars or Dune.
Oh, yes. Oh, great choices. Yes.
Just to visit. Like, I don't want to be in the world. I just want to visit.
Yes. I love that.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite breakfast food? Right
now, my favorite breakfast food is a McDonald's Egg McMuffin without Canadian bacon.
Okay. What's your favorite time of day and why?
I really like the morning. I try to give myself like 3 hours before my day starts so that I can spend time with my cat and so that I can get my space sort of like spiffed up, straightened up. And then I also like to spend some time like in creativity. So whether that's like writing or reading or like listening to podcasts or music, I think it just really sets the tone for me throughout my like very busy days that are like just sort of like jammed kind of back to back. And it feels like a time that's really truly mine.
I love that. Same. I enjoy like having like my morning and kind of my rituals and routines and kind of setting it up for the day. Yeah. It's really like a magic hour. And I've been like getting up earlier and earlier. And so it becomes more and more magical. And then like by 9 o'clock though, I'm like, I need a nap. Like at 9 a.m. I'm like, I'm tired. I need first nap before lunch.
Fully feel that.
Yeah. Okay. Would you rather have the best sex of your life once or mediocre sex every day?
Mediocre sex every day.
Would you rather shop for sex toys or lingerie?
Sex toys.
Would you rather use a shower head or an electric toothbrush as a makeshift sex toy?
Man. So I tried both. I feel like that neither really did it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the shower head was just way less, I just felt way less dangerous than the electric
Yeah.
toothbrush.
Okay.
So safety first, Kat.
Okay.
Safety first.
Would you rather that someone tie you up or be tied up?
Oh, tie me up. Like I,
Mm-hmm.
I that's the quickest way to my heart, my everything. Like just tie me up.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Would you rather have sex to the same song every day or never have sex with music on?
I have only had sex with music on probably like 5 times.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think
No music?
never have sex with music. Yeah.
I know, like, I try to think of that one, and if it's the same song, what song would you be willing to have sex to every
Africa by Toto. I mean, it's
Okay.
the right song for every occasion. It's
Okay.
like, it's going to be played at my funeral. So, yeah.
If you had to listen to it every time you had sex, that's
exactly.
also
Whenever I win
inappropriate.
the Nobel, whenever I win the Nobel Prize, it's always going to be the song. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
When you become a professional wrestler and you come out on stage, that's your
Africa by
muse.
Toto. Right. Exactly. So just cue it up.
Yeah. Would you rather have sex in the morning or late at night?
Morning for sure. Cause like I am like in bed like this by like 9 p.m. So yeah, it's late at night. I might call
Yeah.
911.
Would you rather use a dildo or a vibrator?
Vibrator for sure. Yeah.
And would you rather never have oral sex again or never have penetrative sex again?
Oof. Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Am I never receiving or am I never giving?
Oh, both.
Oh,
So it's one or the other, and like if you choose
just
oral,
it.
then that's the
Okay. Man. Oh, jeez. I think probably penetrative. Gosh, that was hard. I don't like that one.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, that's the last one. So
okay,
that's the last like icebreaker question. You're like, that
save
was
the
a
hardest
tough one.
save the hardest one for last. I'm like breathing into a paper bag. Okay.
Yeah. Now, this isn't like real life, so you don't have to actually give it up. But if you need to take a moment, you're like, okay, we haven't told your partner that this is,
right.
this is what she chose. That's it.
Right.
Like, you're done.
Sorry, ma'am. I didn't know.
It was pressure. I didn't know that was the question. So we're still going to continue questions, but they're less icebreakery. You don't have to break into a sweat.
Thank God.
Yeah. Just if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your background and where you're from, and then how you got into sex therapy and the work that you're doing now. I know that you've had a journey, both personally and professionally. And also we found you through the Expansive group. So if you wouldn't mind also telling us a little bit about that collective as well.
Absolutely. So I'm originally from outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a little hamlet called Johnstown. And I met and married my husband, now ex-husband, there when I went to the University of Pittsburgh. And after I went to Pitt, I moved down to DC and was working in progressive politics. I worked for the Obama administration, for the likes of like Tammy Duckworth. I did all sorts of things, fundraising, campaigning, you name it. I tried it in DC. My heart was never really there. I wanted it to be more a helping profession than it really was. It was, people ask me all the time what it was like to live in DC. I tell them it's much more like the HBO show Veep than it is like like the West Wing, the show The West Wing, or House of Cards, right? It's definitely kind of, everyone's doing their best and you run into a lot of ineptitude, unfortunately. And so it was during that time when I was living in DC and I was really getting to the kind of end of my rope there, that my husband told me that he is gay. And I was like, wow, I really did not see this plot twist coming. And as someone who has identified as queer since about the age of 18, but at the time I sort of understood it as bisexuality, and I didn't really have the words like queer. I didn't have the word pan. So I was just like, when I got married, I was like, well, I guess I've picked dicks. So I guess I'm just like going to play straight for the rest of my life. And this is like fine because it's also easier, right? Because that was like the early 2000s. So,
It's the
queerness
default.
and exactly. Yeah. It was still kind of very like outside of a lot of perspectives that I was a part of. As a queer person, I was like, okay, fine. Like, you're gay. I love you. Like, we can make this work. And he said when he came out, like, look, I want to make this work. I want to stay in this relationship. So I was like, all right, like, we're both down. Let's do it. And so I started, when I am confronted with something I don't understand, I like dive into it head first. And so I started doing a lot of research around these types of relationships and quickly realized that it is woefully inadequate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was honestly terrifying. Like I was terrified by it. Because it was a lot of like, you hear this term like beard, right?
Yep.
For like gay folks who marry like straight, quote unquote, straight folks, which I was not. So I was just like, this is so confusing. The term mixed orientation marriage was coined to describe a large swath of the Mormon community because they're often forced to marry if they're gay. And so there's like this understanding that like you're just going to get married. And so, they really define it as like in the literature was defined as like these gay people married to a straight person, right? So it was like in the confines of heterosexual marriage as we understand it culturally. And it was generally just doom and gloom. And I was very alarmed. And so I was like, okay, what we definitely need are therapists. And so living in DC, I was like, we got this. There have to be folks that could help us. And there was nobody with this specialty. And I was like, this is very bizarre to me because the research at the time said that about 2 million folks in the United States are in a mixed orientation relationship, as I learned that they're called outside of the confines of marriage. So how is it that nobody in like a major metropolitan area is specializing in this type of relationship? Thankfully, we had a previous relationship therapist who was willing to like work with us and like learn alongside of us, but it was definitely like kind of the blind leading the blinder, right?
Yeah.
So then I was like, I had like, this is completely unsatisfactory to me. I have to go do this. Like this is it. I was looking for the thing that was going to be fulfilling to me in my life and my career. And this is it. So my husband and I talked about it. And I was like, I'm a career changer. I have no background in psychology. I didn't take any psych courses in undergrad, like nothing. And so I looked into it, and Northwestern has a program for career changers. And I went out there and visited in October and absolutely fell in love with the program and the campus and the city of Chicago. And Northwestern was the only school I applied to and was like, well, fingers crossed. And it worked out, and I trained at Northwestern's Family Institute. And while I was there, worked in a lab that studies queer relationships. And I spearheaded a mixed orientation relationship study of folks who are in couples counseling and like what the sort of outcomes for them looked like and like what was most helpful for them. I also worked on a study about like what it was like to come out in a mixed orientation relationship. Both of those studies have been published, so that was a really big deal for me. I also got to work as an intern at the Center on Halsted, which is the largest LGBTQ center in the Midwest, which was really impactful. And during my time at Northwestern, that's how I met Casey when they were getting their Instagram page, Queer Sex Therapy, off the ground. And they came to speak in one of our classes about sex therapy. And they were also kind of like, so I'm like starting this Instagram page if like anyone's like interested in like queer folks and like sex and like knows anything about the internet. And I was like, oh, that is me. Let me like get hooked up with you. So I was one of the first people working like kind of behind the scenes with Casey. And when I graduated from Northwestern, the expansive group was already like up and running strong. The now private practice collective that Casey has as part of the queer sex therapy kind of umbrella. And it was the like it's where I knew I was going to go. So didn't apply to any other jobs. I have this I have this thing where I'm just, kind of singly focused, I guess. And in my work here, I really focus on a few different areas. So mixed orientation relationships. I work with all sorts of relationship amalgams. So couples, I have some thruples on my caseload. I also work with like families, so 3+ and just, working through the different and what I consider interesting things that come up relationally in mixed orientation relationships for queer folks. I also work with individuals who are in mixed orientation relationships. And I work with a lot of folks who are coming out later in life, which, since my husband actually did that, right? He was in his like mid 30s when he like fully came out. It was just so fascinating to watch. And I was just like, I mean, part of me was like, I felt like I like had a front row seat to this like sort of opening of a flower, right? To be like really corny. The other part of me was like, oh my God, my life is over, right? So it was just this like really like sort of like dichotomy of like kind of, what's happening. But like from a therapeutic standpoint, so interesting to work with people who are going through that either in relationship or not. And then some of the work that I'm most proud of is working with family members who have folks who are coming out. So I have like, mothers of trans kids. I have like spouses of queer folks, and these spouses identify as mostly heterosexual. That work is so rewarding to me because they sort of come in like, I mean, I was like cool with, queer eye for the straight guy, but like now it's in my kitchen every day and I don't know what to do. And that to me, like, making the bridge from like passive allyship to accomplice, kind of line with them and seeing them grow and change is also really cool. And, part of my work is like sex therapy related, right? So folks who are queer for, and coming out for the first time, after their 20s, they're coming out in their 30s, 40s, 50s, right? And never had queer sex. It's like, I don't know, right? And so working with them on like what the mechanics are, right? What turns them on, what turns them off, right? What they're interested in exploring, what they're capable of exploring within the confines of their relationship, which often leads to discussions around like polyamory and ethical non-monogamy. And when you're working with like poly folks, there's always a sex therapy element, right? It's so interesting because I think when people hear, so I'm also poly, and I think when people hear that, or when people hear that I work with poly folks, they're like, wow, that's probably so sexy. And it's like, well, it's mostly just like communication work and like scheduling. Like that's like the
A lot of
majority.
it's logistics.
Exactly. It's a
Yes.
lot of logistics. Like, do you like spreadsheets and Google calendars? And so, getting folks to focus on like, yeah, what are the sexual pieces of poly that interest you that like made you want to sort of either practice this or explore this part of your orientation? Like, what that looks like, I think is also a really interesting piece of my practice. So yeah, I feel really fortunate that I was able to take something that at the time felt so disruptive to my life, because even though I was like thrilled, it was also really scary to have my ex-husband come out, and I didn't know what was happening or what would happen, to turn into something that I feel so like I feel really excited to like get up every day and do this work.
Yeah. I'm like
Yeah.
so inspired by your story because I think
Thank you, Kat.
it's incredible to take that experience and exactly that. It's something that kind of as, amazing and from your own lens of like, oh, I am honored to witness this experience for my partner or then partner.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
also, yeah, it's a complete blind side that turns your own identity, your own information, your own relationships on its head and
Yes.
like how you communicate with that person, but also your community at large, your family, everything
Mhm.
has to then be reexamined, talked about, like all of that stuff. You yourself have to go through a process, even as your then partner
1,000%.
goes through this. One of the things that you had said that like really struck me was the relational aspect, because it's something
Mhm.
that when I was concepting Head South, so Head South is a sexual
Mhm.
wellness brand. We will be coming out
Mhm.
with products, or we will have by the time this airs. Yep.
So
I'm
excited.
very excited about that. It all came from a dream that I
Ugh,
had, and I woke up. So in this coming November will be 2 years from that dream to the products actually being launched or have launched. So
congratulations.
thank
Ugh,
you.
that's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's one of those things though that like a big component of that, a big part of that for me was the relational aspect of it.
Mhm.
So it's not
Mhm.
just about products, it's about people.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
removing the friction with products, but also removing friction by
Yeah.
communication. And so I
Yeah.
think in exploring and understanding, and it's put a huge lens on my own relationships and growth and identifying like, oh, I'm actually queer. I defaulted
Mhm.
and didn't recognize. And I think one of the biggest things, I'm not a patient of expansive group, but discovering expansive group around that same time has
Mhm.
opened my eyes, opened my vocabulary, and I
Mhm.
have found the nuances of language that are like, oh, that actually feels more within the realm that I am in, and not
Yes.
knowing that that existed versus like, this is like something that's like exists, but I'm not even going to look at it
Mhm.
because I don't even have the words for it.
Yes.
So for my own personal experience of like building this brand, looking at my own relationships, looking at how I want to be in relationships in this world, looking at my own orientation, all of those things that it does
Mhm.
put a lens on it when you start doing this kind of work, regardless of whether it's in
Absolutely.
therapeutics or,
Yes.
brand building. When you're doing this, it puts a lens on it. But I think
Absolutely.
the work that you're doing, and it's so informed by your own experiences, is like the relational aspect of that, like how you relate to your patients, how your patients then learn to relate. Like when you said that, exactly that's what I wanted. I was like, I want people to listen to this podcast, regardless if they're someone going through menopause, they're going through a transition, they're,
Yes.
going through fertility issues, whatever the subject matter, working through codependency. Some of these subjects have nothing to do with me. Like I'm
Yeah.
not experiencing them, but I come from a large community. I come from a large family. So I'm like, I know at least one person that is experiencing
Absolutely.
this. And so for
That's right.
me, the goal is like, I want people to listen to this because their brother is coming out later in life. I want people to listen to this because
Right?
they are going through a divorce and don't know how to manage their finances
Yes.
after this point. Like, so anything that's
Yes.
relational, it doesn't have to be just sex, but
Yep.
sex is such a huge part of all of these conversations, or
Yes.
it comes down to that at some point, or we get
Mhm.
around to that.
Mhm. Oh,
But
yes.
how we relate, how we understand, how we experience the world. And to your point of like, sometimes the world just, or the universe throws something, a curveball,
Mhm.
and then it's like,
Mhm.
well, I'm looking, I'm Googling, the things I'm finding feel, and especially at that time, I'm not sure how long ago that was, maybe within the past decade. It's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
yes, there are more resources since the boom of Instagram, since
Mhm.
the boom of
Mhm.
TikTok and Google, but like
Yep.
even still, a lot of those terminologies live in the shadows, or
Yeah.
these are umbrella terms. So amor is now an umbrella term for a lot of different types of
Yes.
situations and
Yep.
experiences and relationship styles. Same thing with polyamory or ethical non-monogamy, non-monogamy. Like there's so many terms, there's so much vocabulary now, but
Yes.
some of it's nuanced and some of it is just an umbrella term. And what
Yes.
I appreciate now in the time that we live in is that like everyone can kind of start to a la carte and identify, like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be all of these things. And you don't have to
Exactly.
prove yourself when you're in those spaces. I had someone,
Yes.
a very dear friend who, you know, knew she was a lesbian like when she was 3, knew fully embrace,
I
like
love it.
it was, you know, and for other people, and I was talking to her, I'm like, but for other people, that's not necessarily like, it's not so black and white,
Yeah.
straight, gay, whatever.
Yep.
Like, and so that's why queer exists. That's why these
That's
other
right.
experiences exist. And for some of us, we don't discover that or know that that is what we
Exactly.
are or how we feel because it's not the mainstream. It's like
Exactly.
now at this point we have like in media, straight and gay is presented in certain ways, and we're still fighting for like stop queer baiting, and like let these characters just be.
Right.
But
Yep.
yeah, but
Mhm.
and so
Yep.
that's amazing for these generations that didn't know that, like, you know, I grew up in a generation that when Ellen DeGeneres came out, that was like insane. Like it was insanity.
Yes.
At the
Yeah.
time. And so then to
Right.
now have all of these different languages, all of these different relationship styles,
Yes.
it's an incredible time to be in. And it's such an appreciation, like the turnaround that you had from like, this is my experience. There are no resources, or whatever is the resource is dark and shadowy, or like you're saying, like beard, or it's hidden, or you're trying to facilitate something because of other religious, cultural
Right.
circumstances, versus
Right.
like, I want to be in this relationship because I love this person and we have different orientations and we have different relationship styles, but this is our family
Exactly.
unit. This is whatever we
Yes.
want to define it as.
Yes.
And then having the resources to support one another through that. And so for
Right.
you to have that experience and then so quickly turn it over, and then also have like, okay, this is the program and these are the people, these are your people that you're going to be working with, all happen. I have goosebumps around like speaking to that, because it's like, that's
Yes.
so special. And then for people to hear this and be like, there are people out here, there are people that know this experience who can understand or help me get through ... whatever this period of my life is, whoever I'm trying to relate and understand, whoever I'm trying to support, or however I'm trying to support myself and then support somebody else, I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
That's
Oh
like
my
an
gosh.
amazing journey to be on, and
Yes.
to now provide for people. So I totally hear you when you say like you wake up every day and you're like honored
Yeah.
because you're witnessing people and supporting them through that.
Yes. Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah. It really does. And I think that's like one of the things that I find most, aside from just like being able, to sort of like bear witness to folks and their experiences, and like the things that are challenging and the things that feel successful, is also just like, look, like it's not the end of the world, right? Like, yeah, my more, it didn't work out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, like, we didn't get divorced because my husband is gay. Like, we got divorced because my husband turned out to be kind of a dick. Right.
Yeah.
So, like,
Mm-hmm.
it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with the fact that it was a more or that he was gay. Right. And, being able to sort of, and I'm not like holding myself out as like this role model of like queer folks and mores. Right. But like, yeah, just seeing another person who is like, okay, not only did I like survive this, like I'm thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not like a binary thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not any sort of like, I'm either completely destroyed from like the dissolution of my relationship or my husband coming out, or, we have this like cookie cutter perfect, like everything's fine, right? It can be a little bit messy and it can be in the in between. And I think that's what people want. They don't want the sort of like glossy kind of media portrayal of like, and then I came out and everything was great and everyone accepted me and
Mm-hmm.
it was
The
perfect.
Lifetime version of like, yeah,
Right.
like a
Yeah.
Hallmark movie. Mm-hmm.
Or like Love, Simon, God bless. Right.
Yeah.
It's just, that's just not how it is. And I think that's part of what I love about being a therapist who sort of practices is like just in my whole humanity. Like, look, I do not have it all figured out. I'm like, can I swear here?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely can. Sure.
I'm like, I'm messy as fuck, right? I'm figuring out poly myself. I'm figuring out being in mores myself, right? And it's almost like providing permission to other folks of like, it's okay, right?
Mhm.
You can also do it this way. It doesn't have to be crystal clear.
Let's take a quick break. Back in 2012, I made the bold decision to ditch traditional shampoo, and I've never looked back. How did I do it, you ask? With Hair Story New Wash. This product is not just a shampoo or conditioner, it's a unique all-in-one solution that gently cleanses your hair while maintaining its natural balance. No more harsh chemicals stripping away your hair's vitality. Hair Story New Wash uses a carefully crafted blend of essential oils, aloe vera, and fatty acids that cleanse and nourish your hair without any of the harmful stuff you find in traditional products. Here's a little secret. I used to work at Hair Story from 2013 to 2017, and even after that, I couldn't find anything that compares. This is a product I truly believe in, and that's why I'm excited to share it with you today. As a listener of our podcast, by using the link we provided in the episode notes, you'll get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase of Hair Story New Wash. Say goodbye to the shampoo bottle clutter and hello to healthier, more vibrant hair with Hair Story New Wash. Click the link, enjoy the discount, and give your hair the love it deserves. Now back to our episode. I love how you said your existence is giving people permission who exist in similar ways that you do and can relate to your experience without it being like the session isn't about you, but it's like the understanding and feeling like, oh, this person gets it, or is at least learning along the way as well.
Exactly.
And I also think it's very funny. I just had this conversation last week of that exact thing of like, oh, because your ex came out as gay. I love that you said that, and you're like, no, he actually just turned out to be a dick. And it's like, yeah, he didn't contribute to the house. So the universal stuff that causes us to break up is universal. It is not, and people say that about polyamory as well. Like, oh, you
Yep.
opened up your marriage. No, it's the fact that like that was already dissolving. There was already a dissolution. So for people to think that, oh, if we open it up to fix this, that's
Yeah.
not. And I love that when people start exploring this, they have the resources and therapists like yourself to work with, because that's a very big part of it. It is a lot of conversations. It is a lot of emotional deep work for yourself and working through a lot of conditioning.
Yes.
When you open up or when you explore in any sense, anyway.
Yes.
But then for people, when those things don't work out, it's not a failure because of that. Like, it's not because of that thing happening that's the reason. Look, they shouldn't have done that, or she shouldn't have allowed that, or what, or they,
Exactly.
I think society's very quick, and it's like, that's funny because I'm pretty sure the statistics have continued to keep going up of like heterosexual marriages ending in divorce. But yet anytime like a couple opens it up or does anything that's so out of the mainstream, it's like, that's why. And it's like, it's not why.
Yeah.
And that's also not the solution. And in a lot of ways, people's journey, like they needed to go through that process. I think it's this whole belief of like getting married and happily ever after and forever and ever is like, let's remove that construct of like relationships being a failure, because people can be married for 70 plus years and hate each other.
Oh my gosh.
And people can be like in a situationship and like kind of just, friends with benefits or meeting up. And it's more of an impactful component to your life and has more meaning.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that you have to like live together, share a pet, share a home.
Yes. Right.
For that to be valid. And
1,000%.
Honor, like kind of celebrating time in relationships is one of those things that like frustrates me. Like it's amazing. Like, wow, like you made it, whether it's a birthday or an anniversary, but it's also like, but what is the quality? Because the quantity of time does not reflect the quality of the experience for people all the time. It doesn't equate. It's not the same. And so I think when people, talk shit or like use that as a thing of like, well, nope, like people that are like toxic monogamy and like, this is how it should be. Or like, oh, you should have like, you couldn't tell he was gay. Like things like that it's just like, that is so fucked up. Like,
Kat, I like the thing that I think is like the most egregious is my like painfully like straight family members who shall not be named, but like not my immediate family. My immediate family was just my rocks. They just so supportive, so good to me, and so good to my ex-husband as well through his coming out process. But like, like my cousin's hairdresser was like, well, I knew he was gay. Bitch, no, you didn't. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
enough with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like he barely knew he was gay. Okay. You didn't know anything. Like I was sleeping next to this man for almost 10 years, right? By the time he came out, like there's just this like really quick kind of rush to judge, I think, other marriages in the heteronormative bubble, in the mononormative bubble, because I think a lot of hetero folks are scared of that being pierced, right? I think that's why like marriage equality, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that marriage equality gets a lot of, flack, but I think part of the reason is like, well, what if there's a different way of doing it? What if there's a better way of doing it than the way that we are doing it, right? And, what if I have to examine like my relationship? What if I have to examine how I relate to my partner? What if I have to question my own sexuality, right? What if I have to have a hard conversation about my partner might not like having sex with me or like might not be attracted to me, right? And I think that's what I found to be very troubling when I would, tell people. For the most part, folks were so like, my people were just like, okay, great, he's gay, like let's all wear mesh tank tops, and whatever he wants to do, we're just gonna throw, a pride parade for him 24/7. Like, this is great. But like the people who were like, ugh, right, it was almost like, I don't want to catch this, right? Like, is this communicable, right? Like, this is some sort of like disease that my marriage is going to catch. And I think in that heteronormative, mononormative bubble, right? Like, what if my partner, if we look at it through a poly lens, like, what if my partner doesn't get all their needs met by me? Like, what does that, what do I have to do then? And I think that's the thing, is like, people don't want to look at themselves. And that, I think that speaks to that idea you were talking about of like, what's the quality of this relationship and what am I bringing to enhance the quality of this relationship? And I think people are afraid of looking at it and being like, oh, absolutely nothing, right?
Right. Yeah.
I am on autopilot.
Yeah. Oh, we built this on sand. Like, it's when you don't want to look at it, but you're like, there's creeks and there's things, and like the neighbors are doing things differently. And I don't want to acknowledge that because it starts to like undermine how we exist and how we're trying to function, versus like, hey, maybe we like take a look at these things, and if there is a way to make it function better, if there is a way for us to communicate better, if there is a way to relinquish the responsibility of holding our partner to like the end all be all, and like making our worlds function fully, and like being, this is why I love the name of, the collective that you're a part of, which is expansive. Like, what is so wrong with questioning that and then releasing that kind of pressure off of yourself, off of your partner, and still function in your marriage, regardless of, if it's poly, whatever it is, whatever your definition, whether you're heterosexual and anything, any orientation, is like, what's the problem with examining and then actually forming a relationship and a connection and an intimacy with your partner that functions well for the two of you, or
absolutely
multiples of you, whoever is in that unit, for your family, for your, extended, all of that, instead of like, let's just keep burying our heads in the sand and like being scared.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is like, it doesn't have to be the thing that pops the bubble. And like, if it is that, like, if that's what you're holding, like walking on eggshells, holding your breath, maybe that isn't, like, that's going to be something down the road that's not sustainable. That's going to be like, when you see things that like get washed out from under you, and that's what it is. It's like the foundation isn't there. But when you're in alternative relationship styles or orientations, there is this extra layer of, you have to communicate, you have to discover things, you have to explore yourself and your partner. And so there's so much, I think, that could be a benefit for heterosexual couples to learn on just communication skills, because none of us received it. Right. And there's so much of a universal experience. So to your point of like,
Yes.
no, my husband coming out as gay was not the reason. He was a dick and he didn't like fill up the car with gas and like he would do stupid stuff and, you know, like whatever
Yeah.
XYZ that
Mhm.
everybody else, regardless
Yes.
of their relationship
Yeah.
style, long term, short term, it's like, no, I dumped this person because this. And it's not
Right.
because of that specific circumstance. And I think when people use that as a reason, it's like, or they use it like it's for you to decide. That's the other thing. It's like,
Exactly.
it's not for you, the outside world, to start defining this couple and defining what failure is or what success is in their relationship.
Mhm.
It's,
Absolutely.
it's for that couple, those people in that unit
Yeah.
to decide what it is and why.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to like this idea of like, I like want to be really clear that like it was really hard for me to unravel all of that inoculation of like heteronormative culture, mononormative culture when my ex-husband came out. Cause I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, hold on, this was not the deal, right? Like it was so like frightening. So there was like, I like to be really like upfront that it took me a long time, a lot of my own therapy to be like, oh, actually, I don't really subscribe to any of that bullshit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't, I believe it because it's what's like in my brain. Right. It was like almost like my brain was hijacked, right, with these things. I don't believe that there's one single person to fulfill all my needs. I don't believe that he shouldn't be allowed to live his truth and get his needs met. And, the same for me, right? But it took so much undoing. And it still pops up in my current relationships of like, oh, this is pushing on something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's another thing that I see in my work is that queer people, people who are coming out are like, oh man, like I'm just not doing this right. Right. Because I want to be monogamous or like I feel scared that my partner is coming out and I don't want to open the marriage or like I feel scared that, they're attracted to multiple genders, right? And I'm like, look, this isn't your fault, right? Like you've been getting the like, Disney princess happily ever after shit from the jump, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay that it's going to take you a while to undo this. Like I have, you know, 6 years now on you of undoing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's my full-time job now. It's okay that you're still feeling like, but I wanted happily ever after. That's all right. That's okay. We just get to decide what happily ever after looks like for us now. So yeah, that can be really hard for folks.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's through those transitions wanting to be a supportive partner, but then
Hmm.
not really sure if like, and that's okay too. If like, yeah, this isn't the vision, and that's okay to walk away from that
Uh-huh.
too. Like if this
Uh-huh.
isn't like the paths that you're on are no longer parallel, like they're completely different paths, that's okay. Like that's the human story, that's the human existence, regardless of all of those other lenses and identities. That happens. Time, space, experience, all of those things factor into like, it's okay to like, no, I still want that. The original thing that I had envisioned is what I still
Yeah,
want. And it's okay for you, my
absolutely.
partner, to kind of evolve and change and we move in different directions. And it's,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important to remember that too. Like sometimes it's one party in the partnership that is going through that shift. And then sometimes it also then allows the other partner to kind of think through and work through their stuff and be like, actually, I'm this, or I want this, or this is,
Hmm.
I didn't know this was available to us. And then other times it's like, no, I wanted plan A. I'm going to go with
Yeah.
plan A here.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And all of
Absolutely.
those things are great as long as we allow ourselves the space to like examine
Yeah.
what it
And
is
that's what
that's
it's about.
what's that like, what is feeding that narrative, where is it coming
Exactly.
from. Hmm.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up, and
Hmm.
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and talking
Same,
to you
Kat.
today. Is there anything that we missed that you want to kind of add to the conversation?
I think that the one thing that I want anyone to know about like mixed orientation relationships, coming out later in life, poly, is that it's like totally fine to be curious about it. And it might feel a little bit like an unraveling at first, but what it actually can be is like kind of like a re-knitting, right, of things back together. And I feel like living proof of that. And I feel if there's any sort of glimmer or spark, finding the safe people in your life who will like help you sort of tug on those strings, therapists, support groups, right? It's out there. You absolutely don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, it's just to add on to that, it's like there is no such thing as queer enough. So whether it's a glimmer, whether it's something that's kind of been lingering underneath, like, and you're like, oh, I can now, I've had that experience of like, oh, I can look back and think like, oh, I remember in junior high feeling this way, but it wasn't this. It was, or thinking back to like, oh yeah, when I was 6 or 7 and having now these like validating moments that like confirm where I am at right now in my path and my, exploration. And I don't need to prove to anybody by expressing in a relationship. You don't actually, and that's something that I've seen a lot of and affirmed with the content from Expansive Group.
Yeah.
Is that like encouraging people to not feel like, oh, I don't check these boxes. I'm not this. But I also don't feel like I'm this. Like, I don't feel like the default either. And it's okay. Like, you don't have to prove to anybody
That's right.
how queer you are or where you're at.
Louder for the folks in the back, Kat.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to prove anything to anybody or like validate your existence. And even if that is an existence at this point where it's exploring, it's not knowing, it's not having the defined terms, because not all of us are born exactly in that space of like knowing. Some people are born and like just come out into the world and like they know, and that could be in career, that could be in orientation, that could be in relationship style, whatever it is. Some people just come out and you're like, yep, that kid's an artist. And then other people, it takes so much trial and error. It takes a journey to get, and I love that you work with people who are later in life, because there are some people in their 90s coming out or discovering certain parts of themselves or allowing themselves to be in existence in their full form that they've kind of maybe had that little spark. And so, I appreciate your encouragement of like, it's okay to like look at the spark and allow it to kind of become a little more vibrant.
I love it.
How do people find you?
So, I have a brand new little Instagram account. It's at Mixed Orientation. People can reach out to me there. I'm going to hopefully be putting up some more content about mixed orientation relationships and sharing more of my own experience. I would love to hear from folks about their experiences, questions, concerns, comments. I want it to be super collaborative and just meet more people that way.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll include all that information in the show notes, as well as like how to connect with you through Expansive Group. Everything will be listed in our show notes. But Lauren, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Special thanks to all of our guests. Head South is hosted by Kat Meyer, produced by Isis Barlow, edited by Megan Hook, with music by Lily Rezi Rothman, graphics by Ella Chodos Irvine, cover art by Gina Ship Casey, and intro by Murph Meyer.